Good afternoon. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, we will call this meeting to order at 4:02 p.m. And we are looking at the agenda, and I'll begin with administration. Administration, do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
Nothing from administration.
Council? Seeing none, then we are looking for section 2, Councillor Haas.
I move to adopt the committee of the May 30th, 2023 agenda.
Thank you very much. Council, any discussion on that? Seeing none, then we will vote that committee adopt the agenda as presented. Please vote now. And then Councillor Taylor, are you for or against? For, in favor, perfect. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And we will move on to citizens minute with council. Jen, do we have anybody scheduled for minutes with council digitally or anything like that?
No, there are none.
Okay. And then Mr. Woodley, are you planning to speak for?
No, I think I sent a note to all the council members. You guys have received it. You understand kind of what my position is.
Thank you very
I
much.
don't know if there's anything else to add to it.
No, I just wanted to make sure that during the minute with council, you weren't planning to speak as well.
No, I don't think so. I think you understand if I hope you do.
Perfect, thanks. Then we'll move on to delegations and presentations, which I don't believe we have anything scheduled. Which actually takes us to reports from administration, beginning with item 5.1, the Hinton Water Treatment Plant Condition Assessment and Contingency Readiness. And we will move that over to administration, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor McGoon, and I will ask Mr. Russo to present his report.
Thanks, Robert. Committee, this evening what you have before you is a report that is basically requesting that we do a watered down, excuse the pun, watered down condition report of the existing infrastructure that is owned by the town in part, and is a component that is owned by Movement Space itself. And this emanates from in 2018, just to take council back a bit or committee back a little bit, we did a full feasibility study of an alternate greenfield options 1 to 6, where the bypass options talked about, and we have a fairly good idea about what that could be. The only area that we haven't explored was the existing plan, realizing that we've got to the tune of almost $4 million of our own equipment. That's about 11, 12 years old right now, that we don't really have a good handle on that. So to move this mandate forward, we wanted to make sure that that option is looked at, but not a full scale full look through the entire plan. However, to get a good feel as to what we are faced with, should we want to take it over, or should that be an option even to consider with our existing equipment that we've in a couple of years invested into, realizing that on town owned lands and all this type of aspect. However, those comes out in any legal agreements that may go forward, if this option should be a viable one. So that's part of it. The other part is that should there be the need or the opportunity for us to take over the current operations as the town operating the entire water plant, that we would understand what that means at this point in time, meaning that should, we have a different that's West Point we sell to someone else, and we have a different person in town, would we then they be better equipped than us? In the case of emergency, because we do have equipment there, do we understand what our contingency and emergency plan is to manage that? So we're dovetailing those two aspects, and as a result of that, we've walked through this and scrubbed it, that we're looking at about 124,000. That being said, the 124,000, we're trying to avoid any taxpayer dollars to come out of that. We have a very strong opportunity to have grants such as we just listed, the ACP grant, the local gas fund, all these lead itself very well into doing this analysis and study. At the same time, it helps us to get grant ready. So if we have all of these four options that was discussed at the June the 9th and 10th workshop we had with West Fraser last year, we'd be able to have a very strong foot in the door to gain granting opportunities. The only reason why we bring it to council this early is that we're hoping that we'll have enough information, of course, by budget time 2024 deliberations, that this could be an item that has vetted and well understood costs going forward in timelines. At the same time, the opportunity to harness the grant, it takes about 90 days to get the local gas tax sort of as an approved project. So any cost that we may spend once council, of course, at the council meeting approves this or not, we'd be able to retro that cost that we may be spending ahead of time before we get that full approval via the ACP or LGFF or the CBF grants we were talking about. So with that, I would open it up for questions to council.
Perfect. I have Councilor Labarge.
So the four options listed on the front page. I know they came out of a workshop. Are these things that have the approval or at least the year of the board of directors at West Fraser? I mean, go and spend $200,000 to have a look at that. And they just go, well, no, in our opinion, that's not an option. Are these things that have been vetted then, you know, at the higher level to West Fraser?
Through to the chair to Councilor Labarge. The answer is yes. Okay. Actually, when we had this meeting in October, the C-suite West Fraser had a conversation, and they actually came back to us at a meeting that CEO Nassi, Madam Debbie was with us. They actually recommended that this option had sort of been explored every aspect of it. So yes.
Thank you. Councilor Taylor.
My question was exactly the same. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you very much, Councilor Taylor. Councilor Labarge.
One more question, if I might, Winston. So under the analysis point 4, it says requirements to scale the existing plant municipal standards over a defined period. It's a pretty specific statement. Like, have we identified shortcomings, things we're currently operating without, because we are supplying municipal water? So are there things we know about at this point?
I mean, there are things, guys, to the chair, to Councilor Labarge, there are things that are aging, there are things that are showing signs of wear, excessive wear. And so that is what.
Thank you.
Councilor Taylor.
Transfer current operations to the town, option 1. Like, what more is there that we would consider transferring?
Go through to the chair too. Councilor Taylor, so basically it would mean whatever West Fraser is currently responsible for maintaining on a capital and operating on a capital basis, that is what we'd be taking on. So in essence, we'd be taking on everything except processed water company.
So that would, I missed the last part. That would mean that we would need a water license, and we'd be taking that over to under option 1.
Through to the chair to Councilor Taylor, no, the whole reason is that we do not want to get into the water license aspect, because that is a whole different calculation or discussion that needs to happen. I think based on how the water license is issued, the town is mentioned and named and part of that water license agreement. So really we have enough capacity to draw from the river. But it's not a water shortage, it's actually a management component of and better operation of and who is best to operate it. That is what would come out of this condition assessment as well.
So do I hear you correctly that none of these 4 options consider us taking over the water license?
That is correct. We will not be taking over the water license under any of the 4 options listed. There are options for us should we go with a bypass, and not to get too much into the technical side of the feasibility study, but with the bypass option, you'll have stage 1, 2, and 3 of construction in subsequent years. that would then have an option to maybe touch the license, or maybe we don't have to touch it at all. So right now, the license and the water capacity that we have is not of the issue, because that is ingrained in the agreement with AEP.
Okay, thank you.
I have myself and Councillor Hawes, just out of curiosity regarding the request for $200,000 in the 2023 fiscal year. Is the intention that that $200,000 is potentially offset then by those identified grants later on in the report? That was my understanding. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, through to the chair, to you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay.
The 200,000 consists of 124,000 to the contingency as well as the condition assessment. The answer of the 200,000 minus the 124, that's just the balance, would be to help us to get grant ready to create a feasibility study for the grant, so that, because that is what they require at the grant stage to be grant ready.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, so I just wanna, for my own purposes, to understand. The idea is to potentially do option one, to really dig into the current system we have to see, you know, what that asset looks like, what it involves. To give us a better picture to whether or not that's something we wanna pursue, or whether we want to look at some of the other options, which at the same time, it's also preparing us for the grants either way, whether we go with option one and keep it, you know, at the same site, or we go with something else. Is that what I'm understanding with?
Through to the chair of council, your understanding is 110% correct. And just to build on a little bit what you were saying, currently the water plan, the philosophy under which it's run is more towards an industrial plan. We require a municipal plan. So when we potentially take it over, what is going to be that scale down that is going to bring us to that? And that's where the granting will help us, even though it's not on our land right now. But those are some of the agreement aspects that we'll have to walk through. Should this option be viable? Should it?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Labarge.
Thank you. So you mentioned a couple of times about owning the land. I mean, has there ever been any discussion of doing a deal like the Vatican where, you know, it actually buys that little chunk of land that the water treatment plant sits on to sort of isolate that and then make that be a municipal asset?
So through the chair to Councillor Labarge, the official conversations have lent itself to that when we did bring it up, because some of the granting requirements will require you to own land.
Right.
And so if we have the understanding that that could be influenced as a town component, then absolutely. So it's not a foreign concept we'll bring to the table. It's just we haven't explored it until this option shows its viability.
CEO Nasser.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to add to that answer as well. The ownership piece was contemplated as well through the bypass option, and that was reflected in some of the agreements that we have with West Fraser. So as a part of the bypass option, at least at the time in concept, the plan was that a new municipal plant would be built, and then we would, and it has identified a site, and the discussion, or at least the conceptual agreement at the time, was that that piece of land would be transferred over from West Fraser land to the municipality. So that has been contemplated for at least one of the options. And then for the others, I guess those are some of the details that would come out through this study.
Thank you. Council, I have no one on the speakers list. Councillor Voss.
Yeah, I'm gonna move that committee refer the water treatment plant condition assessment and contingency readiness report to the June 6, 2023 regular meeting of council. This week.
Please.
Yeah, you know, I think this is it sounds like it's the best way to move forward, in my opinion. We're getting an assessment of that area to give us a better sense of, you know, what the future costs might be, and the fact that we're also working towards grants to whatever we decide to do afterwards is the best route to take, in my opinion. And we can, further discuss this on June 6th as well, if there's any other changes. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Council, any further discussion on this? Seeing none, then we will call it to question. Councilors, you can vote electronically. Councilor Taylor in favor? Perfect. There we go. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Council administration, is there anything else on this item before we move on to the next item? Seeing none, then we will move on to item 5.2, the Forest Heights fence. And we will turn it over to administration.
Thank you, and I will call on Ms. Walker to present. Thank you, Chair, to the committee. As you can see, I prepared a report based on the delegation, Mr. Willie, Walter Willie, who came at the March 7th regular meeting as a delegation. From that meeting, council has made the motion that committee directs administration to bring back options to build a solid fence to separate this development of Forest Heights from the residences to a future regular council meeting. So before you this evening is a report that outlines 3 options for council's consideration. Options 1 and 2 are with construction with fence. And option 3 is an additional option outside of the motion, which is to plant additional vegetation and trees. And each option is laid out for you with proposed costing that we obtained on a high level from 3 different companies. It was not a formal process. And we received that information and it's in the report for your viewing as well. We did insert maintenance with regards to the life of a fence and as well as how often it would need to be tended to as far as painting or staining. As well with the plantings, we provided you with maintenance with regards to how often they would need to be watered and pruned and taken care of, which is typically 3 times a week for up to 3 years, just every growing season. We did receive a formal written email from the landowner of 109 Forest Heights that they were not in favor of a fence on their property line, but would support additional planting of more trees and shrubs in the focused area that is provided in option 3. And whichever option council does support in the end, there will be a formal request for quotation that would need as per our policy 1500. And I'm here for any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Council, questions? Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the solid red line that was in option 1, that is totally all on town-owned land. Is that correct?
Option 1, this is town land adjacent to Forest Heights Drive. This here is owned by private ownership. 109 Forest Heights Drive is owned by private owner, and he does not want the fence along here constructed on his property line. So option 2 is to just focus on this area, which town owns along Forest Heights Drive.
But the red line that we're seeing, even the one above 109, that is on town thinking that.
No, this is his property line. We do have a public utility lot, which is in here, which is a 2 meter or 3 meter. And if we were to build it within there, it's still going to hinder his lot. He does not want separation because eventually this person would like to amalgamate this lot with this lot in the future. That's the future plans. So to have a fence permanently installed in front of his property line, he does not want that.
Councilor Labarge.
Desire is one thing, but I mean, if the town were to move the fence. Onto town land to complete that construction. I mean, is that within our rights to do that? How far inside that property line fence have to be to?
Yeah. Well, the property line, obviously the 2 meter. Sorry, I can't recall if it's 2 meters or 3 meters. I think it's 10 feet. We would probably want to straddle our PE well, our public utility lot, so that we're not up against his property line, right? Or we could even have it on the edge of the 3 meter utility. However, when you move it from the crest of the road, the slope starts to go down. So then the effectiveness of a fence, however high, right, you're gonna need the higher fence possibly because of the slope of the hill.
But it's within our rights
But-
to do that.
It is our land, the public utility lot, although we would like it to be amicable with the landowner and with us installing a permanent fence. You know, that may hinder his future plans, that might not be.
I believe, CAO Panasek, I think I had you in queue.
No, I'm okay, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, no worries. Just want to make sure we're not missing anybody on the Zoom. We're out of practice, I guess. Councillor Race and then Councillor Ostashik.
Mr. Chair, so just to be clear, looking at that picture. So you're saying you would like to. That one to. Then
His future plans.
I'm sorry?
His future plans, he would like to eventually. Of course, Mr. Woodley knows, purchase up all these lots and amalgamate and consolidate with his commercial property. But of course, right now, we would not support the rezoning of a single family dwelling because there is no buffer. So with the 8 or 9 residents that live up there, eventually that's going to be his long-term plan, but it could be years down.
Oh, okay.
He's
So,
also looking to expand as well, and go across the creek, so he's got some ideas.
Yeah. may I continue to be clear?
Sure, go ahead.
So, there will be no rezoning because it's just not one lot. So having the fence there would not impact him.
No.
Having the fence there would not.
Yeah. Sorry, council, so I'm gonna make a ruling here. If you have any questions that are not of a land, labor, or legal matter, like clarifications on simple things that aren't specific as it pertains to zoning, let's just keep that in mind. If you have questions that are specific to land, labor, or legal, we may want to go in camp. This is the guidance too.
I just gotta be 100% clear on what I'm hearing. You can make a good decision.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you so much.
I have Councillor Ostashik, myself, Councillor Labarge, and Councillor Hoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I need a little bit of clarification too. The wishes of the property owner of 109 Forest Heights. If they're to be taken into consideration, to me, that eliminates both option 1 and option 2, does it not?
Thank you, Chair, through to Councillor Ostashik. Only option 1, because option 2 is adjacent to town Hinton land, Forest Heights Drive. This property line starts at the corner here. And then goes up and over, so it would only eliminate option 1.
Let's seek further clarification.
Yep.
My apologies. Based on the drawing that I'm looking at, the bright red line is
Oh.
the fence, is it not? It goes right through the property.
You know what? The lines have moved from when we got transferred into the agenda, you guys. The lines have moved off the property line, see? And same with the trees. If you look at the trees, I have them all nicely placed up against the property line. So when they transferred, see how they moved? They were to be right up against. So, so sorry for that. That's just,
What if I may then?
lost in translation.
So that fence then in option 2 is actually supposed to be adjacent to the road,
Correct.
right on the edge of that PUL, correct?
Yes, yes. Do you want me to pass
Sorry, I
this
couldn't see
around?
yours, yeah,
Why don't I pass it around to
that
you?
would be helpful.
Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
I did see that the trees. So what-
Yeah.
Take a second and we'll circulate that around council, so.
My apologies. I don't know what happened. Technical.
And then, yeah.
Okay, so that brings another question to mind, Mr. Chair, but I will go into the queue because it's not related to a clarification. on-
Okay, sounds good, Councilor Oskachik, I'll put you back in. I have myself, next. Oh, he can wait a sec, I'll get him. I will get you in a moment, CAO Nassick. I will sort of let you jump there as the CAO. My question pertains to option 3. So with the trees themselves. Is there a potential possibility of extending option 3 all the way across the back of all those properties? Instead of just in that one localized section?
Yes, that can be an option. We did receive an internal proposal from our parks crew. And I did say in the report that if we were to carry it all the way across, it would triple in price and maintenance costs.
So just for clarification, one of the estimated costs quoted in the agenda pack. $5,600 and change, almost 57, so really just. $18,000 approximately, and then
And then
above, okay,
And I didn't put that in the report as an option for you because 109, the structures already acts as a buffer to the adjacent property, so.
all right, thank you very much. CAO, I'm gonna let you jump queue right now, and then I'll go back to my speakers list.
Thank you, Chair, to the rest of the committee. So I just wanted to make sure that we were being clear on, I believe I'm going back to Councilor Labarge's question. But the fence along the north side of the road, within the town's PUL, that is at our discretion. The line that you see that is south of the road, farther to the east, that is between 2 private properties, and that would require an agreement from the landowner. One of the landowners, at least, to get an easement in order to put a fence on that property. There are more heavy-handed options available to us if we were not able to get an amicable agreement. None that I would necessarily recommend at this time, but I just wanted to make sure that council was clear on that point.
Okay, thank you, CAO. I will move over to Councilor Labarge.
I'm good, once I realize that the tree is weak, it's fine.
Sounds good. Councilor Haas.
I had the same question as you, Councilor, so okay.
Okay, Councilor Oskachik.
Okay, so my question then I guess is if option 2 were the option that was preferred by councilor or by committee or council. I don't really see how that benefits the residents that are on the south side of Forest Heights Drive though. I understand option 1, but option. Other than that very first property that's furthest to the east, I don't see the benefit of going with option 2 unless I'm missing something. Clarification, yes.
Administration, is there any comments on it?
Thank you, Chair, through to the committee. This is the area that was most affected, is that area of option 2. When the construction was happening for the retaining wall and the parking lot. So this is where we saw a lot of trees have to be removed. in order to do that construction as well. There were some, as Mr. William knows, some trees had, were exposed to winds and had fallen over as well. So we did have some of that as well. So this is why this area is where we actually had the landowner, provide additional plantings at the time. And from what I understand, it's still not sufficient enough is how I'm understanding Mr. Woodley to view it. So this is why we kind of focused on that area. Because again, we have the house here, we don't have any complaints from this landowner about light source coming from the parking lot. The owner did address the light issue and had moved the light standard so that it was not facing up towards the houses. As well, I believe on the building itself, they had to redirect those lights as well at the time, because I think there was a complaint that they were shining through, so. So that's your.
Councillor Rostashik, does that, yeah, okay, good. I have myself and then Councillor Haas. My question pertains to public utility laws, that are identified in the maps. So I guess the one thing I'm not as educated about is the best practice of potentially building fences along public utility lots. Can admin comment on that? Like, is that something that we may have to go, if there was work that needs to be done, would we have to go and take down a fence to dig, or like, I just don't know what's needed.
Thank you, Chair, through the committee. Typically a PUL lot, you'll see them where in subdivisions where they're going to create a walkway for pedestrians to get through from one point to another. You'll also see them around our storm ponds as well, public utility lots and fenced. In this situation, originally this PUL was supposed to act as a walkway because there used to be an existing walkway there. However, once we went through the process and it determined that walkway was not going to be a permanent walkway because it was not in the post, like in our parks plan for the Trails Master Plan. So then we just left it, the PUL got registered land titles, but the idea was it was just an existing walkway at the time there. And I think if Mr. Woodley could tell me if that walkway was well used at the time, back in the day.
Not really, it didn't actually run through the bush.
Through the bush, and then
Yeah,
it didn't really lead anywhere either, right? Like,
no, because they didn't want people going over to the hotel and
Right.
back there. The other issue on that was, they're worried about vandalism, which is an issue,
yes,
access to the properties on that side.
So
Yes.
I'm gonna sort of, if I'm gonna allow myself a follow-up just for clarification on that. So if, and again, I'm just looking at the trees being sort of a bit of an issue there. Is there any potential problem if we allowed trees to encroach onto that PUL? Is there any significant infrastructure concerns or anything like that?
thank you, Chair. No, there's no utility lines here. There's no underground infrastructure, so it's
Okay.
not going to impact anything.
Okay,
Same with the fence. If we're putting fence posts in there, the only thing I would worry about is the stability of the slope. I don't know if that would need to be re-engineered. There was a geotechnical done many years ago, so I don't know how that would stand with putting equipment back on there and drilling holes for the fence. That could be a potential issue or not.
okay, thank you. Councillor Hawes?
Yeah, just, I guess if option 3 were considered, I know what a juvenile human being is, but how tall is a juvenile tree? Because I'm wondering, like, how long, if we were to plant juvenile trees there, that it would make a difference? Are they the size, like, are juveniles the size of a fence and then they would obviously get bigger? Or you know, are we looking for a few years? Like, I guess that's my other thought with that option.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Councillor Hawes. That is part of the report, the proposal that Parks Department have provided for us. Some juvenile trees are a bit taller than others. And they will take 3 to 5 years to probably get to fruition. However, he did explore getting trees that were already mature. However, mature trees are super expensive, as well as you have to have certain equipment in order to plant the tree, like cranes and stuff, I guess, to lift them. So it's not viable. It was not a viable option. He did provide me with the heights, a trembling aspen, you know, if you ask Mr. Matt, 50 millimeters, in feet, what's that? Forest 380.
Yes.
Okay, okay, so I know he did provide height here somewhere, but you're correct, they're not gonna be. Okay, oh, okay, so spruces, what, 7 meters in height, 3 meters spread. The idea too, they would do cluster plantings of 3 different species to help each other with shading and all that stuff. I learned a lot about horticulture. Sorry, it's not gonna come to me fast like to find the heights. Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, trembling aspens can grow to 10 meters in height. In a 5-year period. And he does provide the 3 options of different species.
Yeah, I'm just curious on what a juvenile, I understand it being that high when it's mature. I'm just wondering, as a juvenile, how big it will be, so I'm thinking 2, 3 feet potentially, you know, that's all, so. Okay, no problem, thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, admin, in looking at the red line that runs north of 109, does that satisfy the needs of the people on that street? So it stops, it doesn't continue west. So for the people that we spoke to in that neighborhood, that stopping that red line there satisfy what Forest Heights doing?
At this time, there has been no public consultation on the remaining until Wayne Council wants to adoption. That's why, like I said, I did reach out to this one owner, it directly affects that.
Thanks.
Councilor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question for administration is there any obligation for the town or the developer or any other body to take any of these actions or similar action? Or is this simply a consideration for concerns that were brought forward by residents in that area? Or in other words, are we obliged to take this action or no?
Thank you, Chair, through to Councilor Ostashik. To answer your question, no, we're not obliged. The developer has no more requirements under their scope. So this would be the town of Hinton deciding if we want to engage in any of these options based on hearing from Mr. Woodley at his delegation on March 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Ostashik. Council. I have no one in the speaker's queue.
Our recommendation is that the committee direct administration to bring this report back to the regular meeting of June 20th as presented.
Thank you. Councilor Ostashik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move that committee accept the Forest Heights Drive report as.
Do you care to speak to that, Councilor Ostashik?
Sure. In light of the fact that there isn't an obligation for the town to take any action, I personally don't feel that it's a responsible use of taxpayer dollars to invest $20,000 to $60,000 in mitigation that, if it was a requirement, should have been undertaken by the developer, not the town. I don't think it's required in a use of taxpayer dollars. I'd like to see it accepted as information. At some point in the future, if there's an appetite to take action on it, it would be available at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, there is a direction on the floor to accept the report for information. I don't think we need to set that up. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I'll be in favor of the direction. Thank you.
Council. Give Councillor Race.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will not support the direction on the floor. I feel that we do have an obligation to Forest Heights. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I don't accept it. I think we should have done something when this was developed more than what we did. Thank you.
Thank you. Council? I will speak at this point. For myself, I won't support the the direction on the floor. I think there's of the options, I think there's a potential for, call it consensus, where everybody's equally unhappy. So unfortunately, I won't be able to support the motion on it. Council, any other discussion before I call the direction to question? Okay, then we will call it to question. Let it appear here, then I'll read it out. That committee accept the Forest Heights Drive report for information. Council, if you could vote electronically now. Councillor Taylor, if you are in favor, if you are opposed. So you are opposed. Okay. And that is defeated 2-4 with councillors Magoon, Taylor, Race, and Labarge against. Councillor Labarge.
Thank you. I would like to move that committee direct administration to bring back the regular meeting on June, bring this report back, the regular meeting of June 20th, 2023. And if I could just quickly speak to it, I think the ombudsman's report wasn't completely clear. It didn't. He had some reservations about things like communication, and I think if decisions are made and they impact citizens, there does have to be a level of responsibility, and I'd like to ferret out what the options might be. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor, any discussions on the motion on the floor? Councillor Taylor.
So Councillor Labarge, are you proposing like we'd have a discussion on the options when this is brought forward again? Like which option we pick?
Yes, I would.
Okay, not do it now.
Here today, I think we've seen the options now. And I think if given time in a meeting where it's expected to make a decision, that's right time to get after it.
Councillor Taylor, clarify your question. Okay, thank you. Council, any further discussion on the direction on the floor? And it is the reflected recommended action. We will call to question that committee direct administration to bring back to regular meeting of June 20th, 2023 as presented. Council, if you could please vote electronically now. Councillor Taylor, are you in favor? Thank you very much. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, council. Council administration, is there anything else on this item before we move on? I have, Councillor Haas?
I guess my only question is. Option one is on the table, but unfortunately, I guess my question is option one also gonna still come to us, the fact that the landowner. Is not in favor of having that fence there. Is there, is that gonna be part of it? Like, if there's other options, I was assuming that administration would have brought that to us, that the fence had been placed in an area or something like that, so. With that information, so I'm just curious as to, is that gonna be part of the options, with that consent?
Thank you, Chair, through to Councillor Haas. We could, as that option, redirect it into the public utility lot, so it's not on his property line, as an option.
Okay.
I could also provide, another option to show additional trees across the whole hillside. That if you guys want to amend this, but you just made the motion, so it's too late now. But if you needed to amend, because otherwise we've made the motion and it's exactly.
No, it's okay, I guess that's where I was not this. No, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, any further discussion? Councilor Labarge?
Well, I guess then some clarification on that. Wanting to, in 15 years, a $15,000 fence is not gonna be the defining element on whether those purchased properties would amalgamate at some point. I mean, it just seems a weird thing to be arguing about a fence that runs in front of a property that he might want to buy and amalgamate 15 years. I mean, has that discussion been had or, I mean, it's not a hard and fast position, I guess, what I'm going to do with that.
You know what, at this point, because we're starting to infringe on land discussions about individual, if I could. We can move into in camera if it's something you absolutely need right now.
We'll get it for the,
Okay. Okay, and I apologize, I hope.
no, that's fair.
Okay, thank you. CEO Panasic.
Chair, if you'd like, I can address this at a high level, Councillor Labarge's question.
You know, from a chair's perspective, because it's not essential to any decision making right now, and because it borders on land, that's where I would feel more comfortable if we address that at another time.
No problem, thank you.
Thank you. Council, any further discussions at this point? Okay, very well. Then we will move on to item 5.3. And that is the RFD political advocacy approach, draft town of Hinton advocate, and we will turn it over to administration.
Thank you, Chair. And the report before you has the listing of topics that have been brought forward before, as well as a sample of the template of what the document would look like. And if there are any questions on this report, I would recommend directing to see what I'm looking at.
Okay, sounds good. CEO Panasic, did you want to lead us off on this one?
Sure, through the chair to the rest of the committee. Just a little bit of the background. This was included as a part of our 2022 strategic plan. Specifically that council and administration work to enhance our relationship with the provincial government. And 3 tactics were supported through the tactical plan. The first step was, or the first tactic was to establish a process and strategy for political advocacy. The rest were focused on seeking opportunities to advocate for those priorities, as well as cultivating an effective working relationship with senior levels of government. So we're bringing this forward as, we'll say, a first step in what I believe is best practices when it comes to political advocacy. We've been fairly fluid in our practice to political advocacy. what we're recommending here is for an approach and a process, and to ensure that there's some clarity throughout the organization, is to actually introduce some formality into the process for council to approve the listing of items that they would like to advocate on, and to approve the specific asks. And what that'll do is just provide clarity, not only to all the members of council, but to administration as well. So we can achieve the second and third tactics of effectively seeking the opportunities on the topics, and to cultivate that effective working relationship. I believe that with some clarity, we'll also be able to provide our own MLA and our own representation with a leg up in advocating on our behalf. And really what this is, this isn't a very complex process, but what we are asking here and what we're recommending is that council approves a list of topics. Once those topics are approved, even through the committee, we'll bring each briefing note on the topic to council individually. And then if council accepts the briefing note along with the specific position that goes along with that briefing note, we would include that into a centralized advocacy document. And we do have what was intended to be a visual representation of what we think that would look like. So that's what we're proposing today. So we are looking at a few things from the committee at this point. Number one, is there an agreement that this is a process that would be valuable to council and the organization? And number two, what are the topics that are top of mind right now that administration can take away, start to do the research, create the reports, and bring back to council at a future meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Panasic. I have myself in queue. I guess I like the idea to, sort of that 32,000 foot level. It makes a lot of sense to me. I guess my question procedurally is, a lot of times when it comes to our political advocacy, we know those elevator conversation topics like case in point, water treatment plant. Would the whole purpose of having some of these reports give us a little bit more of a backgrounder that's standardized across each councillor, so that if we do have a conversation with our MLA or with our MP, we're all singing from the same song sheet, so to speak? Is that kind of the purpose of that? Please.
Through the chair, that's exactly correct. Typically, briefing documents are no longer than 2 pages. And really, there's 3 elements of what I think is an effective briefing document. One is the background of the issue. One is our analysis, where we include all of our evidence-based justification. And then the third element really is typically a clear and concise position or ask of whatever decision maker we're advocating for.
Thank you very much. Councillor Labarge.
Okay, good. So that final point that you made has this all make sense to me, because having a whole bunch of work to be done to have the background in case you bump into somebody in an elevator, in my mind, would have been a poor use of time. So if what we're doing is identifying and then targeting the people that we're gonna go toward, that makes sense to me. And if that's what we're looking to do here, then I would be in full support of this.
CAO Panasic, please.
Thank you, Chair. The only other thing that I'll add is a benefit, I think, of introducing a little bit of formality to the process is ensuring that whatever we are advocating on, it's supported by the whole of council. Everybody has their priorities individually, but when we do meet with senior levels of government, ministers, the premier, whoever it may be, it's important that whatever we bring up, we have that conversation beforehand, and we can ensure that is supported by the whole of council before we have those meetings. That was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hawes, then Councillor Labarge.
Yeah, just to speak to, I'm in full support of this process. It's not something that was formally done in the past, and I think that a lot of benefits can come from this, being prepared. You know, we've had in the past where would we like a conversation with the minister, we do, but we don't necessarily have this, and this prepares us for it, and it's strategic in, you know, who we invite, who we ask for a meeting for. So I think this is move our community forward in some of these areas. This is essential. So I'm in full support of the recommended action. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Labarge.
Thanks. And with that said, then I do have a couple of other ideas to add to this list then for consideration. And maybe we'll do them one by one. Because many people love one and hate the other, maybe they hate both, but. I think we should, in the top of mind right now is maybe add medical services to this list. I know that there's been discussions with the doctors and the state of that in our community and talking to other communities, it's top of mind there as well. So maybe that's something we should. So I would seek consensus to add, I don't even know if that's the right term, but medical services to the list of considerations.
Thank you, Councillor Labarge. I have myself next, and I'm gonna start just procedurally out of respect for the idea. I fully agree, 100%. But in terms of efficiency and things that we have planned coming ahead, my question to, I suppose, council and administration is the following. We have a workshop that we are currently planning for. And I am just wondering if because it is a strategic planning workshop, if maybe it would be best served to approach that list as one of the items that we discuss at our workshop. And then we have some time to think about it between now and then and have a little bit of room to not have as much formality around it. And again, that's for both council and I would actually hope our CAO could speak to that procedurally. Is there any time pressure? If we brought this, the list of topics to that strategic workshop, is there any time crunch? And then to council, would you be okay with that?
Through the chair to the rest of council, based on the topics that the committee has already approved, I do think that we will be having a time crunch with trying to fit everything into that process. But what we can do is maybe just come prepared to have an open discussion. So if we do have time, if the previous conversations go a little bit quicker, that maybe we have this as possibly a backup option. But we can certainly bring this forward to a future committee of the whole if that doesn't work out as well. I think it's a good forum to have this discussion as well. And the other thing is, as long as council's okay with the listing, that'll be enough to get us started. But this is, you know, political advocacy is typically a very fluid process as well. You know, things change very quickly. Even from the time that this report was completed till now, it's obsolete as the cabinet is likely to change, the decision makers, the priority of the government of the day. So this is very fluid, and I think we'll be having a lot of these conversations going forward. So we can certainly postpone this to another time, and we can have it at that process. But I think right now, if we didn't take anything else off the list, I'd likely recommend that be a backup item to have that discussion.
Just for clarification, the direction made was fully in order and I support it. It's just looking at if it was something council wanted to dig deeper to. I have Councillor Taylor next and then Councillor Labarge.
I think I was gonna kind of say what the town manager said. To me, the most important thing is to have the process figured out. And I like trying to do more of this because I don't think we're doing this as organized or as consistently as we could. But part of the process that I like is that we all agree on a topic and that those topics are gonna come and go. So to decide on a finite list of topics, that's never gonna happen. And some of the things are things that we could be advocating for, and some of those are things that we could be advocating against. The government could do something to our community that we don't like, that we want to speak against as well. So as long as we have a process where, when there's a topic that's suitable for this, it comes to us, we talk about it, we add it to our advocacy list. That's a good step as far as I'm concerned. The exact, what the list looks like, it's never going to be final. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Lamarche.
All right, well, rather than flogging a dead horse to death, maybe I would retract my request for consensus and let's have that flow into a more holistic discussion then on where we may end up with a finalized list.
Council, just for clarification, Councillor Labarge, you're requesting that that direction be removed from the table?
Vehemently.
Council, is there any one who's opposed to removing that from the table? Seeing none, then, thank you. Councillor Labarge.
Well, I would move that council directs administration to prepare the briefing reports on the following advocacy items for a future meeting of council listed as option one. There are options in all the groups. I'll just cut and paste that in there, Brad.
So just to confirm, number one, as far as the fourth bullet, is
The
that,
end of ongoing grants and government.
thank you. Would you care to speak to it at all, Councillor Labarge?
No, but, well, I guess listening to what people have had to say, I agree that it's gonna be a fluid list. Figuring out the process is what we're talking about here, so. Let's actually put our minds to what people are spending their time on.
Council, any discussion on the direction on the floor? And I just would like clarification, Councillor Labarge, that committee directs administration?
Whatever the.
Okay.
Whatever the committee directs administration.
Okay. Sounds good. Council, any further discussion on that? Councillor Taylor.
Do you tell me again what I'm voting on?
Yeah, I will read it one more time before we call the question. That committee directs administration to prepare briefing reports on the following advocacy items for a future meeting of council: helipad, water treatment plant, water distribution funding, ongoing grants and government approvals. And if you're in your agenda package, it is page 2 of the agenda package under options, where it says number 1, as far down as ongoing grants and government approvals. It does not include the 2 bullets below that. Council, any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, then we'll call it to question. That committee directs administration to prepare briefing reports on the following advocacy items for a future meeting of council: helipad, water treatment center, water distribution funding, ongoing grants and government approvals. Please vote now. Councillor Taylor, do you vote in favor? Perfect, thank you very much. And that is carried unanimously. Council, any further questions or issues? Administration, any further items with that? Seeing none, then we will move on to reporting, council reports, boards and committees of council, and I will start with Councillor Taylor.
No, nothing to report.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I spent the last week in Toronto with the mayor and some fellow councillors. I spent much time talking with municipalities about their issues in recruiting and retaining doctors. And lucky enough to talk with 3 municipalities who have been very successful. One went from the 3 doctors to 13 doctors in 1 year. And they will share this information with us. I've also spent a lot of time talking with municipalities about their housing issues. Learned a lot about supportive housing. Wasn't aware of that before. So supportive housing, affordable housing, mature housing, how P3 comes into the conversation, how we need to get creative to get things done. Very good meeting. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Labarge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, same, I spent the last, 5-6 days at the FCM. And what struck me, I guess, was how similar the issues are, whether you're in the Maritimes, Toronto or Hampton, and they really fall into that housing, and some of that being supportive housing as it relates to addictions and mental health. Doctor attraction and retention is an issue everywhere. It's an issue in Ontario, Alberta, and so we're not unique. But what was really interesting with all the discussion around the fiscal framework, how more and more service issues are being put down on municipalities, and not necessarily more taxes, but how is there a sharing of the provincial and federal levels of government for access to funding to pay for those services. So it was interesting, first one I've been to, and just really, I think that fiscal framework is going to be one of the most important issues. It's municipal for the short term.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Ostasha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing.
Councillor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a few things. First off, I just want to send again congratulations to the graduating class of Father Gerard Redden School. I was able to attend and, experience that graduation. So a lot of attendance there and support. So a lot of great support too from the community. There was, I believe, about $12,000 worth of bursary scholarships that were given out that evening as well. Attended the golf club meeting, meet and greet with the board members. They have 3 new board members. 3 new board members. Actually more than that. Sorry, they had a turnover basically of pretty much all of their board. But I had an opportunity, Mayor Nicholas and I were there, and CEO Panasic, and had a good conversation. I think ease some of their concerns for that area as they come forward, and also able to hear some of their concerns and the fact that there'd be further collaboration down the road as well for any development in that area. So that was good. Also attended the Historical Society's meeting in Councilor Reis said as she was in FCM. There's a lot of work happening there. They're still working on the Tom Peterson papers in conjunction with the library and looking at digitizing in the archives. Just completed the first blacksmith workshop this past weekend, and looked like it was quite successful. They had 3 2-hour sessions and saw some of the stuff that was built by some of the community members on Facebook, which looked really good. So hopefully that's something we'll see again. They've also received a grant to add a person, a tour guide, for 15 hours a week. And the intent is to try and get and bolster the canoe activity. They have a canoe there, river canoe, and trying to get more tourists using that. And unfortunately, they also applied for the summer students grant for the summer and have not received word yet. So it's not looking good that they are going to receive that grant. And I also, with Councilor Reis, attended the meeting with along with CEO Panasic, with the physicians, and really just looked at how can we support them. This is something that's new to them. They usually didn't have a problem attracting doctors. The Hinton area was an attraction enough, but with changes and lots happening in that area, needing to step up the recruitment. So how can the town work together with them to bolster that? Unfortunately, too, we were to also have a potential doctor attend our community on Friday, and we had arranged some tours. Unfortunately, that person, I guess, has taken a job elsewhere, so we didn't have that opportunity. So, but it was good conversation, some understanding too, that as the community obviously saw in the paper, and the doctor shared that with us ahead of time, but the concerns and one of the concerns that way I understand it is they tried to get a grant or tried to get some money through Alberta Health Services, but as Alberta Health Services standards suggest that there is enough doctors. However, what they look at is what doctors cover emerge. They don't look at the clinic. And so doctors that cover emerge, there's enough, but doctors also have full-time at the clinic and other duties as well, and that's not taken into consideration. So that's the, one of the issues that we're running into, why, the burnout as the suggested, so. Anyway, thank you, that's all I have to report.
Thank you very much. For myself, I also attended FCM. Starting with the political keynotes, I was a touch disappointed because the one politician I never had a chance to listen to live, the leader of the Conservative Party, wasn't there. It would have been interesting to hear from them. Of course, they sent a deputy leader, which was fine. It's just, you always look for those people you haven't had a chance to hear speak yet. So I'm hoping there'll be another chance in the future for that. The session, I think, logistically that I got the most out of was the session hosted by the Canadian Infrastructure Bank. Because that's certainly been an organization since its recent-ish inception. It sort of evolved because the main idea for it initially was to sort of be a bank to deal with, the burgeoning costs of infrastructure deficit. Unfortunately, when it came to be, that's not exactly what it ended up being. Nonetheless, the presentation was interesting, and I still think that there's a lot of potential to utilize the CIB for internal infrastructure projects here in the town of Hinton. Not just, a lot of their work recently was around transit, but it's certainly not solely related to that. I think as far as like water infrastructure and distribution goes, there's some possibilities there. You just have to really consider the green element and how the projects are sustainable moving forward. So I think as a town, that's something we don't want to lose sight of moving forward, because it's helps offset the funding and costs of the taxpayer as opposed to moving through a traditional lender. So that was the biggest takeaway that we'll leave there. And we will move on to our CAO reporting the status report.
Thank you, Chair. I just have two items to update today. The first is that we were able to get an agreement with Public Safety Canada to pay the entirety of the RCMP retroactive costs in 2025. So between January 1st, 2025 and March 31st, we will be required to pay the entirety of that bill. And the other thing to update council on is the Hinton has been selected as a host for the Boston Pizza Cup. And that is the qualifier for Alberta or the provincial men's to see who is going to represent our province at the Briars. So big event. We're just waiting on the details and specifics on what the ask for the town of Hinton will be. Once we have those specifics, we'll determine how to bring that forward to council for further discussion. But big thanks to the Hinton Curling Club for initiating that and making sure that they were doing all the heavy lifting in terms of organizing and a committee to volunteer for the event.
Awesome. That's fantastic news. Thank you so much, CAO. Do you have anything for the council action list or council action complete list? Oh, and then I'll get a question from councilors in.
Nothing on the action pending list unless there are questions from council. I'd be happy to answer them.
Perfect. Which then will take us to Councilor Taylor.
Could I ask the CAO a question or two on the strategic workshop in Edmonton?
Let's see here. Yeah, I think that would be appropriate at this stage of the game, you bet.
Yeah, okay. Three questions. Do we have an agenda for that? Is there cost info, what it's gonna cost with the attendees? And did we approve this as council, going to Edmonton and sending, these staff? Was that something we approved in a formal council meeting?
Through the chair, we're working on the costing information. I should be able to send that out by tomorrow. When it comes to the agenda has been set in terms of the topics and what we are going to be discussing. That was approved by council. The approval to have the event, that hasn't been brought to council to make a formal council motion as approval, other than discussion at the committee of the whole meeting. We are having, I will just mention that we are having difficulties finding dates. I think that further discussion is going to have to be had on this session, just because this will be an important discussion that we want everybody to be there. As of right now, I don't believe there are any dates until the end of July that will work. So I think further discussion will likely have to be had. I was hoping Mayor Michaels would be here at the time, but I think that we will schedule in another discussion on how we want to have this workshop and what we want it to look like to ensure that everybody can be active participants in it.
Would it be appropriate that we have this approved at a formal council meeting? Because it's going to Edmonton and because of the cost?
Through the chair,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, CAO.
through the chair to members of the committee. This is a training workshop. It doesn't have to be approved by council. If there are concerns and if council does want to approve this through the formal means, we certainly could do that as well.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, council, we have no items on the closed session list. So at this point, we are looking at item 8, adjournment. Councilor Lavarche.
Well, no, I have a couple questions as it
Oh.
relates to the council list,
Oh, okay, sorry, go ahead.
if I might. So, we still have, and I asked about this the last time, and it just seems to be stuck in there. MD 2112, council direct administration report as relates to land consolidation at the Hinton Golf Course. We have a listing there, possibly rescind the motion. Is work being done? Time to rescind the motion? I'm just curious.
CAO Knassick.
Through the chair to the rest of council, yes, work is being done on that. I've met with my senior leadership team and we're going to be bringing forward a number of changes to this action pending list. One is looking at a few that may need to be rescinded. And number two is looking at how we can possibly organize it a little bit better to better separate committee directives and council directions. So we are working on that. There's a few that we do need to bring forward, possibly for clarification, possibly to be rescinded, but it is on the radar and we are looking to bring that forward soon.
Yeah, I just leave it at that, then I'll wait to see the new format.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, just to check one last time before we move on, any questions on the council action pending list or the council action? Okay, seeing none, then Councilor Haas.
I will move to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
There we go. Council, any discussion on that item? Seeing none, then I'll call it to question. If you can please vote electronically. Councilor Taylor, are you in favor of adjourning? Yes. Thank you very much. And that We're just waiting for the number 6. Councilor Labarge, are you in favor of adjourning? It's just not
It
showing.
just popped up.
Oh, okay, that's, oh, there we go, thank you. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. We are adjourned at 5:22 p.m. Thank you very much.